Hey, what's going on, AP peeps? We have APUSH Review the Frontier for you on the docket today. Lots to know about the frontier. It is a topic that appears quite often on your exam, so please be familiar with everything we will be covering in this video. All right, so let's do a little intro to what the frontier is. So let's figure out what exactly it is. Well, it's a line that separated East and West, or civilization from wilderness. And it's important to note that throughout American history, this line constantly shifted. It was not a line that stood still. This was something that was fluid and continued to move as time went on, and it often shifted further and further west. So, for example, at one time in United States history, the frontier was this line that followed the Appalachian Mountains, or the Proclamation Line of 1763. This could have been said to have been the frontier at one point. So everything to the west of this was wilderness or unexplored area. If we look at this next map, by 1860, which is all these little dots here, the frontier is kind of in the middle of the country. So there's all this unexplored land out here. So it's really where east meets west. Keep that in mind, and this is something that is fluid and moves throughout time. So why is this so important? Well, many Americans viewed the frontier as an opportunity, particularly an economic opportunity for them. This goes along with something called the safety valve theory. What this states is that it was this belief that people could always move to the frontier in times of economic crises. So if you're living in the city, if you get laid off from your job in the factory or wherever it may be, there was always this belief that you could just pack up and move out west, and you could farm and then experience lots of economic opportunities out west. In reality, most people did not take advantage of the frontier, but the idea of this represented optimism for people and hope for better times if need be. So let's flash forward to 1890. This is a very, very important year in the frontier history. And we have the census. So keep in mind the census is taken every 10 years, every year that ends at a zero, and has helped to determine the population of the country. For the first time in United States history in 1890, a frontier line was no longer visible. Let's take a look at another map here. By 1860, all the red was settled. By 1870, all this orange was, so you see it expanding more and more. By 1880 is this yellow, and by 1890 is the green. So if you look at this map, by 1890, really there's not a lot of areas that is left to be unsettled. And most of this area is probably desert or not arable or good land to farm on. So by 1890, the frontier is essentially gone, the U.S. Census Department reports. So what contributed to the decline of the frontier? Well, there's mass migration out west, in part due to gold rushes and the Homestead Act of 1862, which offered free or reduced land for settlers to move out west and improve the land. So in 1893, 3 years later, we have a very important thesis, and it's titled The Significance of the Frontier in American History, written by this guy, Frederick Jackson Turner. That is yet another sweet mustache. Look at the length coming off of that. If you'll notice, I have an obsession with mustaches, and this is a pretty good one. So the main idea of the writing, the end of the frontier ended a unique era in U.S. history, is what Mr. Turner argued. And here's a quote from his writing. It says, "Up to our own day, American history has been a large degree the history of the colonization of the Great West. The existence of an area of free land, its continuous recession, and the advance of American settlement westward explain American development." So in other words, the frontier really, according to him, helped contribute to the American identity. And this helped make American society different from Europe. This is why American identity was so much different from European countries. So what's the impact of the end of the frontier now that it's over? Many historians argue that the closing of the frontier helped lead to overseas expansion. And again, in 1890, the frontier is over. Please know that it's closed. And two areas that we'll see the United States expand into are Asia and the Caribbean. So if you were to ever see an essay about why the U.S. expanded overseas and began developing a policy of imperialism, there's many reasons for that, and I'll do a video on that later, but you can really argue that it began that now that the United States, the frontier ended and all the land is essentially taken, people wanted to look outside the continental United States. And also, unfortunately for Native Americans, much of their land, they lost. This is around the time that we'll start to see Native Americans be put on reservations and they'll have less and less land available to them. All right, that's it for me in the frontier. Thank you very much for watching. If you could take a moment and subscribe to my channel if you have not already. If you can help me spread the word, put this on Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook. Show this to anybody you think would benefit from this, whether it's a fellow classmate, a teacher, or a friend in another school, anybody you think. Please take a moment and share this with them. If you have any questions or comments on this video or any others, please feel free to leave them in the comments below and I will respond. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate you watching and have a good day.